Very warm good morning to all of you. Srimati Vijay Bharati Saini, Acting Chairperson, National Human Rights Commission, and I have a strong fraternal bond with her. We both belong to the legal fraternity. Shri Bharat Lal, Secretary General NHRC. There are many people in the audience. I have enormously benefited from their guidance. Some of them have mentored me. It will be difficult to pick out names for fear of omission and thereby violation of human rights. So, distinguished audience, excellencies, and friends in the cause of human rights. I had a tenure which I will not be able to forget because it is reminded on every platform. My tenure as Governor State of West Bengal. That makes me resonate about the state of human rights. But ladies and gentlemen, post-poll violence in West Bengal does not define the scene in the country. It is in isolation. But whenever someone calls me former governor of state of West Bengal, I am reminded of the great contribution by National Human Rights Commission and law of the ruler rather than rule of law defined the situation. It emanated from a report rendered by former member of National Human Rights Commission, Sri Rajya. A thorough report that addressed all issues and also indicated the way ahead. Friends, I am happy to be here to mark the 31st Foundation Day of the National Human Rights Commission of India. Today we are not only commemorating an institution, but the fundamental values that are integral to this institution, integral to the Constitution of India, and more importantly, integral to our society and culture. This year, the World Human Rights Day theme is equality, reducing inequalities, and advancing human rights. Equality has to be understood as it is beyond definition as such. However, indisputably, at the core of equality is that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and in rights. Religion, race, color, sex, status, or other facets are merely superficial. Discrimination in any form is challenging to core aspects of human rights. Human rights are best secured and nurtured with public response. There can be no greater custodian of human rights than the public at large. We need to stand firm when such violations occur. To respect others' human rights is to respect one's own human rights. To respect others' human rights is a divine duty. These rights are inviolable. Preamble of our Constitution, seeking justice, liberty, equality to all citizens, is a sense of human rights. They need to have fraternal feelings with respect. And for persons who have a different point of view, the other point of view, different perceptions and views. Human rights, friends, can be defined broadly in two ways. First is a narrow one. Legal way of defining human rights. Drop of a hat, we jump to it. Make a very small isolated instance as systemic. That's a legal way. The notion grants certain rights to individuals by their inherent being. No law is needed. We are born with human rights. We are born with basic rights. They are inalienable to humanity, inalienable to the individual. And therefore, according to me, in all humility, we must see human rights from this prism. That is our way. That is Indian way. That is the way we have lived through over 5,000 years. No country in the world can lay such a claim. When we go into evolution of these rights, they primarily started to begin with political rights, including the right to life and liberty. There was gradual accretion of other rights. Judiciary in this country has added many dimensions to these rights. But there is another way, and that is the civilizational way of thinking about human rights. That is organicist way. It looks human beings as part of organic whole, including the society, prakriti, nature. And the system as a whole has to live in peace. It is encapsulated. Sarvam Shanti. We have dictated our lives over centuries in spite of various difficulties by this dictum. For us, as a nation, nurturing of human rights is a way of life. Ours, the civilizational way of thinking of rights did not evolve from political rights or economic rights and then adding other rights, such as freedom of conscience. The basic, the pristine, the organic, the original can be looked into our Vedas and our functioning over the ages. This defined Sukh for all, well-being of all, happiness for all. This defined we come to the planet as trustees, not as exploiters. We live not for us, but for all. We know for sure we can be happy only with everyone being happy. In as much as we have in togetherness to save this planet, because this existential challenge is not to an individual. It is beyond any element of race, caste, creed, color, or geographical boundaries. Similar is the situation with respect to human rights. Sarva Sukhina Bhavantu, the chairman focused it. This is motto of NHRC. What a grandiose motto. A motto emanating from our civilizational ethos, emanating from what we have lived through. We have all through the history exemplified it, and in the face of very daunting circumstances, some of which were ruthless, reckless, trampling our civilization. Yet the nation stood firm. That's what India is, that's what Bharat is. Our scriptures were and are our charters. They are repository of knowledge and wisdom. They are repository of human way of life. One will have to strive for years to come to add to them. That is ultimate when it comes to knowledge. And these scriptures were loud, everyday proclamation of these rights, that society and civilization granted. Our civilization created institutions to ensure that these rights were honored. In any governance in this country at any point of time, those who governed had to listen to the voice of senior people, our sages, our seers. They were the real controllers of morality, propriety, and all that constitutes welfare of humanity at large. Our temples ran open kitchens so that there was freedom from hunger. Education was free, so there was right to education. Friends, if you look at the Indian Constitution, it has 22 paintings. The first one is Gurukul. It defines our society, is concerned that everyone would have access to education. You gave dakshina according to your ability, but there was no tuition fee. Guru dakshina. If you got education, you can reward your teacher, you can honor your teacher. But it did not have compulsion element. It had optional element. It had to emanate not from your fiduciary strength, but from call of your soul. That was sublimity we practiced and are on way to it. Everyone was allowed to practice their faith. Look at our country. Who came? They came. They were received. They were absorbed. They were in oneness. They felt at home in this country in the same manner as they felt at home at other countries. A country which they had to live under circumstances which are indescribable. That was the scenario, friends. So on and so forth, I can keep on going, but the list is endless. In a way, human rights are very much part of our moral fabric, our way of life. And why only just past? Our contemporaneous governance, look at it. It underlines this very philosophy in several ways. Policies are driven by the idea of human rights. When COVID hit us and hit the world, it was a non-discriminatory challenge to the entire planet. High and mighty and great nations suffered. In that scenario, the government ensured in this country that no one sleeps hungry, regardless of access to their means of livelihood. Free grains were given, friends, to 850 million people, empowering them to face the challenge. What started on 1st April 2020 continues till this date. And I wonder, is still in the world people talk of hunger crisis in this country? I am appalled. 850 million people are getting support of free ration in this country. And that is irrespective of their color, caste, creed, religion, geographical location, or other aspects. All I can say is, those who think about India's hunger situation need to reflect. And get into repentance mode. This moral fiber is driving governance in this country. I don't want to reflect more on this. So much attention has been bestowed on human rights in this country that what was unthinkable is now a ground reality. If a widow has to stand in queue for 2 hours and suffer to get pension for the service her late husband rendered, this was loss of dignity. Not any longer. She gets sitting at home, and this makes Bharat accounting for more than 50% of global direct digital transfers, which indicate promptness, which indicates no leakage, no licensing, no one in between. The world needs to know it. I'm not seeking recognition, just to be informed. Direct benefit transfers hit at the corrupt. And you'll be happy to note, friends, corruption has been neutralized from power corridors in this country. Corruption is no longer a password to a contract, to employment. Corruption leads you to be attendant to law. Gone are the days when some thought we are above law. The equality before law in this country has been demonstrated to such a wholesome level that human rights fruition and blossoming is taking place. Such a large country with such diversity, the world needs to know about it. Another serious issue is they know it. They seek to run it down. I'll come to that later. Not long ago, in our country, and in the world it happens, in major part of the world still, ignominy of women defecating in public. A huge challenge for a country like ours, 1.4 billion people, to take care of this most significant human right aspect which occurs minimum twice a day. And look at now, our scene is dotted by areas that are 100% free of this menace. The work is going on. The world has to see it to believe. What a transformative change it was. Well thought out policies have ensured toilets now in every home. A fundamental right not required to be scripted by any constitutional prescription or law. A ground reality at the moment, imparting to our women and others also dignity, which is most precious facet of human rights. Friends, these are just illustrative. Technological penetration has created equalizing situation and helps curb iniquitous practices, making everyone equal before law. No country in the world can claim the kind of equality before law ecosystem we have. Those who thought they were above law, beyond the reach of law, enjoyed immunity from law, are suffering at the hands of law. And everyone in this country is accountable only and only in accordance with law. A big change the world has to notice. We are perhaps a country in a single-digit situation on this score. The strong arm of law in our country curtails the environment of impunity. Friends, do you think a country that had such a holistic idea of rights takes care of everyone? Do we require sermonizing? Do we require lecturing about human rights? We are open to all ideas. We are resilient. But We don't need lecturing or sermonizing on human rights aspect. Certainly not. I must, friends, compulsively advert to unfortunate aspect as well. Unfortunately, this great civilization suffered taint on its otherwise unblemished record. I must record it, you see. Not that we have not had air pockets or strong headwinds that traumatized people on the plank of human rights. We had, but limited. Bharat, long championed as a guardian of human rights, faced three stark transgressions that scared generations. They scare my generation. They are scary for younger generations also. The brutal partition being one, the oppressive emergency being the other, and the horrific 1984 riots. These traumatic events stand as somber reminders of the fragility of civil liberties and the imperative to vigilantly safeguard human dignity. But then we are a nation to quickly fix situations, to learn our lessons. As a tribute to our deep commitment to human rights, laudable steps have been taken. I will recount only the recent ones. The nation is celebrating Constitution Day, 26th November, every year. This will remind us all to fervently work towards the realization of noble values emanating from our preamble, thereby nurture human rights and create an atmosphere for their blossoming. Another significant step was taken this year. June 25 will be observed every year as Svidhan Hatya Divas to mark imposition of draconian emergency. Friends, this is intended to honor the spirit of millions who struggle to revive democracy despite facing inexplicable persecution at the hands of an oppressive government then. This will help keep the eternal flame of individual freedom and defense of democracy alive in every Indian. Youngsters will come to know all about these aspects every year. The nation, and friends in particular, my young friends, must be informed that on June 25, 1975, the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, in a brazen display of dictatorial mindset, strangled the soul of our democracy by imposing emergency on the nation, resulting in violation of human rights. Lakhs of people were thrown behind the bars for no fault of their own, and the voice of the media was silenced. And judiciary at the apex level failed as never before. And therefore this step has been taken. These are not being looked in this country from partisan angle. In this country we look at events and situations only from one angle, and that is angle of nationalism, angle of constitution. Friends, Constitution is our North Star when it comes to human rights. Celebration every year of Constitution Day on November 26 is a reminder of our duty to nurture human rights. Every person in this country, particularly youth, will be reminded of this solemn obligation, solemn duty to be performed for democracy and for the nation. Constitution Hatya Divas similarly on June 25 every year will act always to remind us of the dangers and challenges to human rights. While track record of Bharat as a nation, as custodian of human rights is singularly remarkable, and this I am saying with utmost restraint, I'm using minimum words. In this scenario, there are pernicious forces within and without that in a structured manner seek to unfairly taint us. These forces are overzealously in overdrive. They have an agenda that is far distanced from human values or concern for human rights. Friends, such is the sinister design that on all conceivable occasions, these forces that are inimical to Bharat avail national and international fora to tarnish our fair human rights record, arrogating for themselves the right to calibrate. I pose a question to myself. Who has imparted this right to them? And it is most opaque. Hardly due diligence. Ground reality is very different, as I indicated about hunger situation. Some of these think, and that is a colonial mindset. They think they are ordained to enjoy such a right to harangue civilizations like ours, to doctor situations, to impede our growth. These forces have to be neutralized by actions that exemplify, if I may say so in Indian context, pratighat. These people have another strategy. They devise their own indices. They rank everyone in the world. The exercise smacks of imperial hubris. To show a nation in bad color, they have a list of nations. I dare them to come to this country. If there is heavenly spirit, heavenly ecosystem, it exists more here than any part of the globe. We are a nation of saints and sages, culture and civilization, empathy, sympathy. During COVID, facing a challenge, we supported 100 other countries. Wherever there has been a crisis in the globe, by way of evacuation requirement or earthquake, this country has always gone ahead. Expansion is the worst form of human rights transgression. This country has never believed in expansion, has been victim of expansion. Prime Minister of this country has unequivocally stated on a global platform, we are not living in an era of expansion. We have to resolutely address issues and conflagrations by discussion and diplomacy. This is Bharat. These sinister forces are driven by an agenda that is fiscally fueled by people who seek to make a name for themselves, trying to shame them. They try to create havoc with the economic system of this country and made no bones about it, no secret of it. First one partly successful, second one collapsed. The balloon was punctured. Human rights, friends, as a concept, should ignite us to look inwards. There are occasions in your life, day in and day out, when you can serve human rights by hand-holding people, the aged, the challenged, the needy, and also you can do it by counseling. People need counseling. Every country in the world should measure human rights on a yardstick of well-being of their country's body politic, overall economy. In last decade, India's economic growth, which is exponential, incremental, now unstoppable, is not pyramidal. It is plateau. Everyone is getting the benefit who is in the last row. Affordable housing, gas connection, tap water, internet connectivity, road connectivity, and this is non-discriminatory progress. Never in this country a developmental project has been dictated by circumstances that are not sublime, serving the ultimate cause of human rights. A country where even for a single person to exercise his right to vote, arrangements have been made. Steps have been taken by the government to ensure that those who are in hilly areas or difficult, challenged areas, they get electricity in their house. Such is the track record and concern for human rights. Friends, look around the world, look around the globe. You'll find Bharat way ahead of other nations when it comes to preservation of human rights, particularly minorities, marginalized and vulnerable sections of society. Tell me which country in the world treats its minorities the way Bharat does? We have seen condition of minorities in several nations. Geographically, several nations' names have been totally eradicated when it comes to their demographic composition. Surprisingly, the small segment left behind had to seek refuge in this country. Human rights cannot and should not be used as a tool of foreign policy to exert power and influence over others. Naming and shaming the wrong is a degraded form of diplomacy. You have to preach only what you practice. Friends, if one incident happens, it is disproportionately blown out, fast-tracked. Narrative gets wings. Voices rise all over, fueled by fiscal power. That is the time when our youth and media must be vigilant. We have to be vigilante of every aspect of human rights. We have to remember we are a nation of 1.4 billion people. An isolated incident cannot define us. But their incidents just go unnoticed. Nelson has never been remembered more. When I think of those nations that turned Nelson's eye to such kind of horrendous transgressions of human rights, I do not wish to dwell more on it, but catalogue the events in Europe alone. You'll find it. Look at our school system. We don't have the kind of shootings that some countries claiming to be very developed have it, virtually on a regular basis. Friends, with those who are closely aligned, an approach turns from clinical analysis to blissful ignorance, which allows us to draw conclusions of the political nature of approach to human rights. And let me remind you of one recent incident, an incident that defines what human rights ought not to be. That is virtually a crucible of decimating human rights. The world has seen it. some have suffered in this country. The most disheartening aspect of the plight of Hindus in our neighborhood and the deafening silence of so-called moral preachers, custodians of human rights, they are totally exposed. They are mercenaries of something which is totally antithetical to human rights. Look at the kind of barbarity, torture, traumatized experience, boys, girls, women. Look at our religious places being sacrileged. We are too tolerant, and being too tolerant of such transgressions is not appropriate. I call upon everyone in the country to seriously reflect, think if you were one of those. Evidence in episode after episode is piling up that the deep state is engaging in lawfare against rising powers. Somehow it seems they are unable to digest the rise of civilizational states in the international system who assert their own identity. Let me reflect a little away from the issue. Does United Nations Security Council reflect a sense of human rights when it keeps 1/6 of humanity away from it? There has to be auditing of its performance. Friends, the discourse of human rights is calibrated for political projects. Get a project, get money, get some people employed. You are applauded only when you talk negative of this country. I know of an institution in the world that claims to be at the peak. They call Ivy League institutions. A book has been written, Snakes in Ganges, over it. A celebrated figure, world-renowned, Dalai Lama Ji was invited. The invitation was cancelled. The one who took the call to invite was shown the door. And we get preachings from there that in our premier institutions, admissions are accorded by privileged pedigree system, not by merit. I went to school on foot, traveling 6 kilometers, got educated by scholarship, come from a farmer's family. I am before you. Draupadi Murmu, a tribal woman who faced all kinds of challenges, is the first lady and first tribal president of this country. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi, for historic third term after 6 decades, and first term with full majority after 3 decades, and one who has changed the landscape of this country, is an OBC from backward community. The only memory he has of his youth is serving tea while the train came, that too in a hurry to make money. I am defining these 3 top posts in this country of 1.4 billion. If this change is not pro-human rights, if this change is not transformative, well, I fail to understand how to define it. People-centric governance is our mantra, is our philosophy. Last mile delivery, welfare of the weakest. You see our civil services, you will be amazed, particularly the people outside the country who get into there, the marginalized. I was so happy to find that the father was a painter in a police station and the girl came there as superintendent of police. And these instances are not isolated. They are many. My mother was not educated formally. My father did not go beyond class 5. I am before you. This defines the great change on human rights this country has. Friends, when you ignore these developments and artificial issues are imputed to portray Bharat in bad light, I can only lament the intellect of those heaviness who are distanced from rational approach. It is painful to find such realities when you scratch the surface of those who claim to champion and advocate human rights. I don't want to say more. I know them. We have a system. Institutions are being used, including judiciary. We have to be on guard. Every citizen in this country has to be watchdog of human rights, because those trying to challenge are inspired by ill motivations to destabilize this country. They find our growth indigestible. They are not acting as per their soul or mind. They are being financially manipulated. Much of it has been contained. It shall not be allowed to happen in this country. We are a nation. To us belongs this century. And we will be a developed nation by 2047, making our people in every respect enjoy human rights. Domestically, we should be wary of elements that use human rights to advance their political agenda. I am addressing the community of politicians. Citizen Amendment Act. How can this be an issue? The act does not deprive any citizen of this country of his or her citizenship. The act does not handicap any person on the globe to take recourse to taking citizen of this country. The act is an affirmative step to give citizenship to those who are being hunted, persecuted. And this is not limited to one religion, many religions. Even such a soothing aspect is sought to be challenged. Well, we have a situation. Deep state takes shape only in this way, and therefore nip it ruthlessly in the bud when it is seen. Look at the prime example I indicated. There couldn't be a better gesture of social magnanimity collectively expressed by an act of parliament than CAA. Stateless refugees who are to flee from Bharat under severe repression for committing the sin of choosing to follow their conscience from our neighborhood. They had option to be here. They committed sin of conscience, went. Then were suffering day in and day out. And this is being opposed. This balm, this soothing medicine is being opposed on the plank of human rights. How sharper than serpent's tooth could it be? Friends, this duality exposes a sinister political agenda that includes another aspect which is germane to human rights blossoming and flourishing, and that is demographic balance in this country. History is testimony that nations have completely lost their identity by not addressing this issue. It has, as a matter of fact, global repercussions from the perspective of human rights. The tremors are being felt nearly all over, more in countries that espouse this menace. They are getting the heat of it. The demographic climate change in the world, and particularly in the nation, is an issue that calls for urgent systemic addressing. I emphasize, friends, demographic climate change is a challenge that is required to be addressed. If the world has to live in peace and harmony, nations have to believe in their nationalism and preserve their identity. I have no doubt you will appreciate and be one with me. It is already taking shape of an existential challenge. Let's diffuse this, thereby sublimely serving human rights. Another aspect, human rights should not be sealed for those who take law into their own hands, who challenge law, who use firearms, who create terror. When you deal them in accordance with law, they have easy friends on the point of human rights. पुलिस ने कहाँ गोली मारी, कैसे मारी, ये नहीं देखते किसको मारी, किस हालात में मारी, क्यों मारी. The society can't be held to as a hostage or captive to these violators of law. Law enforcing agencies have to courageously play on the front foot to deal with these rogue elements who are not only loose cannons to society, but a severe threat to human rights. Fortunately, this is being done in this country effectively. Violators of law threatening attitude, challenging law and order. There can be no more worse enemies of human rights than these sections. But painfully, what a travesty. These rogue elements of society, these violators of law, who are threat to the society at large, are afforded cover by human right plank institutions. On this occasion, I want to leave you with two ideas, friends. First, if you are a practitioner of law, some of you are, I have been one myself for decades, fight for the rights and dignity of the weaker sections of society. Also fight against those who seemingly seek to fight for them, but are fighting for someone else. Expose those. Never let anyone appropriate the discourse and guaranteed rights for sinister political designs. This is happening. I want to look only through political prism, what gain it is for me, and then I moderate my response. Please don't do it when it comes to nationalism, when it comes to nation, when it comes to development, when it comes to human rights. Play your politics, be partisan, but on these issues, please be bipartisan. Second, if you have legal education or are interested in research, take time to focus on those who seek to teach us and are ignorant, who seek to teach us not the subject, but indoctrination. Overcome them, expose them. Pick up any part of the globe and you will find they have to take many lessons from Bharat that has nurtured human rights since ages. Friends, we have heard great stories about the care of the last mile individual, but we want to find the precise governance model that enables this execution of human rights. study it, evolve one, contribute to policy making, and that has to be translated into politics also. Friends, as we celebrate the establishment of NHRC, let us renew our commitment to the idea of human rights, the rights of our fellow citizens, the ideas inherent to us for generations and centuries, praying for the good of all. Sarve Sukhina Santu. Always remember, I conclude, always remember, human rights preservation, blossoming, and sustainability is in our hands. It is our collective and societal duty that we must unfailingly perform. Thank you for your time.
बहुत बहुत